Finally, I'd like to go ahead and invite our first panel up. If y'all would just start to make your way to the stage. This first panel will be discussing what it looks like to develop a relationship and collaborate and establish boundaries between community-based organizations and law enforcement um, who serve in the same communities. So panelists will share perspectives from both sides of that conversation, the unique challenges that each faces, and how to just increase cooperation, coordination, and successful leadership. Welcome.
So great to see everybody here today. I unfortunately wasn't able to be here yesterday, but I'm really looking forward to all of the presentations and panels today. I am so excited for the panel that we're about to launch. This is a topic that's become very interesting to me over my past year that I've been at RTI. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Josie Cave Sivaraman, and I'm a public health researcher here at RTI. And what I would like to say is, as we're kicking off this panel, which is discussing how community-based organizations partner with police to reduce gun violence and violence in general across communities, I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to two different organizations or two different groups. First, I want to say thank you to the CVI and community-based organizations across North Carolina, across the US, who are doing this kind of work. And specifically to Gate City, who's here to talk to us today. Stacy's going to give a little bit more of an introduction to Gate City, so I'll let that lie for a second. I also want to say thank you to the law enforcement partners and agencies that are here with us today, joining from across North Carolina and across the nation. And I want to obviously thank you for your service. You probably heard that one before, but I also want to thank you for your data. Your data is very, very unique and very, very precious to us. It is not well understood that in the US, we don't have a unified source of fatal and non-fatal gun violence data available to us, which has really hindered our ability to create interventions and to address the rampant problem of gun violence that is affecting this nation. And I am excited to say that the solution to that is coming from you all, from law enforcement data. And we previously have had systems of data in place to collect and aggregate that data and share it across the US. But now we have much better data coming out of law enforcement agencies in the form of the National Incident-Based Reporting System that you all contribute to. That is our National Crime Offense Reporting System, and it's a way that we can track gun violence on a very specific scale that allows us to understand how programs are working and to evaluate them. In North Carolina, 97% of law enforcement agencies or thereabouts are reporting to NIBRs, which is absolutely excellent. Across the nation, it's around 80%, so it's a growing resource. At RTI, we've been doing, and I should say my colleagues, not I personally, but my esteemed colleagues have been doing a lot of work to develop that system and to make sure that it is a growing resource to us as we're trying to understand how to combat gun violence. And again, just to really put a pin on it, the strength that I think the National Incident-Based Reporting System adds, or NIBRs, is that it gives us an opportunity to look at non-fatal incidents. Okay, not everybody in the US experiences gun violence the same way or experiences violence in general the same way. Non-fatal incidents are really affecting our communities, and we need to have a better way of tracking and understanding and intervening on that. And so I want to thank our law enforcement agencies for helping us better understand and track that. And I'm so excited to hear from our community-based groups as well and how they're working to prevent it.
Good morning, everyone. I'll echo what Josie said and really thank all of you for joining us here today. We're really excited about this panel and about the topic of community violence intervention. So my name is Stacy Sechrist. I work in the Violence Prevention and Harm Reduction program here at RTI. And so I thought it would be helpful just to give everyone a brief overview of what community violence intervention or CVI programs are before we launch our panel. So community violence intervention strategies are really aimed at focusing on the small number of individuals in any community who are at highest risk for violence victimization or perpetration. And the idea is to engage with those individuals through the use of credible messengers to really begin to engage with them, connect them with resources, provide opportunity. There's a lot of resources that I'm sure that Ingram can talk to us about that individuals in that category need. And so the idea is really to help communities start to address the underlying or the root causes of violence in the community. So one thing that has happened from the Department of Justice starting in fiscal year 2022 is they have started a historic investment in CVI programs. So while CVI work has been going on in many communities for decades, DOJ has started to fund CVI PI programs, as they call them, across the country. So just 2 weeks ago, Dr. Jackson and I were at the second annual CVI PI conference, which was held in Chicago. And at that conference, there are about 80 sites who are now funded through the Department of Justice to do CVIPI work. And so that acronym is Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative. So sometimes you'll hear CVI, sometimes you'll hear CVIPI. So it's really provided a really great foundation and almost a sense of legitimacy to this work. And DOJ is going to continue a new round of funding in FY24 so that this work can continue. And I'll tell you, this was one of the best conferences I went to 2 years ago. It'll be my favorite conference again this year. And so this work is just amazing. So we're really extremely grateful that you all are here to talk with us. And just one more piece about CVIPI before I kick it over. So Greensboro, they wrote a CVIPI grant in FY22. So they were the first round of this funding. We at RTI are doing an evaluation through the National Institute of Justice to do the evaluation of that program. And Dr. Jim Trudeau, I'm not sure if he's in the room, but he's the PI of this particular project. And so through that partnership, we've really started to learn what this work has looked like in Greensboro. And again, we're really honored to have our panelists to talk about what it's been like to build that work there. So I think at this point, we can go ahead and kick it over to the panel. And if everyone would just take maybe a couple of minutes just to introduce yourselves and what the role is that you have in the community and the work that you do.
Okay, my name is Ingram Bell. I am the program manager for Gate City Coalition, which is a violence prevention program in our city. We once ran off of the Cure Violence model. However, we kind of outgrew the model in doing the work. I'm also a survivor of nonviolence, and that is part of the reason that I do the work.
Good morning. My name is Regina Glaspie, and I work with the Greensboro Police Department. I am a contractor. I started working with them in 2020. I started working with them in 2020 after spending 32 years in the media industries. I worked for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. I did a stint at Northwestern University. Then I came to North Carolina. I worked for the Greensboro paper and the Winston-Salem paper, Dual, and then Burlington. And after 32 years, I was kind of tired of it. So I decided, let's do something else. So I talked with the chief, and he was interested in doing more community-based policing and figuring out how to get the community more engaged so that they could help with safety in their neighborhoods. So we started that work in 2020. And then in 2022, we got the CVIPI grant. And it was supposed to be a 6-month gig, and I'm now in 3.5 years.
Good morning. My name is Megan Fitzgerald, and I'm with the Greensboro Police Department. I am a community resource officer for District 2. And as a community resource officer, I am responsible for conducting monthly meetings for the neighborhoods in our district. I'm responsible for following up on citizen complaints and concerns, and we also do a number of community engagement and outreach events.
Good morning. I'm Officer Guy with the Greensboro Police Department. I am also a community resource officer for District 2. I feel like I'm gonna eat it. I'm also a community resource officer for District 2. I work with Officer Fitzgerald, and we have another officer that's not here, Officer Campbell. We are assigned to different zones within the district, and we handle, like she said, all of the complaints in the area. We have the opportunity and the pleasure to go to all of the community meetings. And I do this work because I absolutely feel it in my heart, and I care. I care about making the community a better place.
Good morning. I'm Karen Jackson. I'm an associate professor of leadership at North Carolina A&T State University. My involvement with the Community Violence Grant includes volunteering for about 3 years in the work of the Community Connectors, which you'll get to hear a little bit more about as we go through the questions on the panel. And so, as a part of the Community Connectors group, my role was advocacy and research and funding. And so I was a part of the team that worked with Jim Trudeau to submit for the community violence grant that was awarded to the city of Greensboro, which is in collaboration with both North Carolina A&T and the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. So we have a research team that's a part of our grant. I have a background in doing work, social justice research, and community engaged research. So that the focus of my work on the CVI grant is looking at the issues of violence in our communities, our target communities for the grant from a community engaged perspective. And I've been a researcher and evaluator for about 15 years now.
Thanks, everyone. So one thing that we've learned through our work at RTI, so we have a couple of projects, the National Case Closed Project and Project Clears. And through that work, we've been able to work with really communities across the country. And one thing that we hear over and over in our conversations with both law enforcement and with community partners and CVI programs specifically is that they really want to partner together. They really want to do more work together, but they're really grappling with what that could look like. So how do they really establish a good working and a true collaborative relationship with one another so that they ultimately have the same goals of public safety? And so what is the best way to achieve that? And so when Josie and I were talking with the Greensboro team, we started to realize they have something really neat going on here. They seem to have kind of figured this out a little bit, and they're going to tell their story. But what we do know is that that work wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always natural to do. But then organically, you all started to figure it out. And so that's why we were really excited to be able to have them join us today to kind of give everybody a view of what that could look like for a law enforcement agency and a CVI program to really work together in a collaborative way. So again, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, so I think that would be a really good place for us to start with our questions. And I think the first question that we have for you all is, how did you all start your working relationship together?
Okay, so let's back up a little bit from here.
Good.
Let's go back really almost to the beginning. Greensboro was having some issues during COVID. George Floyd hit, and the chief really wanted to focus in on how do we de-escalate some of the anger and some of the issues after George Floyd, but how do we help our low-wealth, high-crime communities engage with police and be a part of the solution? So I started working in November 2020, and then there were a group of women who had come to the chief and said, we have some time, we want to help. Dr. Karen Jackson is one of those women. But there were other women in the community, Tiffany Rudd, who ran an employment agency, Dorian Sherrill, who are also a part of the Community Connectors. They call themselves professional volunteers, but they see the problems in the city and they want to help. So Chief James decided to organize a meeting with community leaders. It was Guilford County Schools, Greensboro Housing Authority, Cone Health, A&T, UNCG. I'm sure I'm missing some, but it was a lot of people that he felt could help with some of the issues that we were facing. And the one thing that we talked a lot about is crime is a symptom. Yes, you can do things to reduce crime, but if you're not willing to work on the root cause, you're just putting a Band-Aid on it. And he was like, we're not going to do this. We're going to actually go in community and offer them help that will sustain them, not just today, but for a long time. So with this work, we did a little short survey and we knocked on some doors and we asked them some questions. The things that came up that were the hardest resource for them was transportation. Most of us don't have to worry about that. It was a food insecure area. It was a healthcare desert. I mean, these communities had no resources. So as we started to work, we talked to local residents, we talked to churches, we talked to Greensboro Housing Authority facilities. We spent time talking with people in the community and listening to them, because the way that you fix a problem is to listen. They're going to tell you what's going on in their communities. And as we started to listen, we started to bring those resources to the community. We called Cone Health. They brought their mobile unit every week on Tuesday. And so if people needed health care on Tuesdays, they knew that they had doctors that would be in the community. We started doing fresh mobile markets and bringing in fresh produce, because let's face it, to go to Dollar General or Family Dollar to get food, none of that is healthy and is causing more problems with chronic illness and other issues such as that. So we really focused on root cause. And then when the children started going back to school, we started working with the schools. And one of the schools that we have worked with, Wiley Elementary, their test scores are going up. We're bringing in junior achievement. Cone Health did an oncology event for the parents there. We've taken in Guilford Works and NC Works to do job training and offer employment opportunities. The one thing that I'm going to say, people don't wake up and say, I'm going to commit a crime today. It usually happens because something very basic that all of us in this room have, they don't have. And when you get to a point where you don't know what to do, you kind of end up doing something that is drastic and unfortunately not good for your family. So as we started this work, Officer Guy was running into people who were like, well, we've been talking to Regina. She didn't know me. And so anyway, my office is in the Office of Community Engagement. She came on the third floor and she was like, who is this Regina? And so anyway, we met, and the community resource officers joined the community connectors with this work. And, you know, it was really interesting when people started coming out their door and they saw police officers actually in the community. And they were already doing walks and stuff, but COVID had kind of slowed down a lot of stuff. So we started spending a lot of time in the neighborhoods, and people started to know who we were, and they started to call us when they needed help. And it wasn't always a safety issue. Sometimes it's code enforcement. Sometimes it's Greensboro Department of Transportation. We started bringing whatever the resources were that they wanted, we brought them to their neighborhood. They didn't have to pick up a phone to try to find them. We brought those resources to them. And so what we started to see was that the neighborhoods started responding more. And a lot of these neighborhoods had a lot of crime going on, but they started working with us. And when they saw stuff, they started calling so the police could get on things right away and things would not continue to go on. So the work organically kind of came together, and it also brought us together. And as Officer Guy said, she really wants to help the people in her zone. And I think that's what everybody here on this panel is going to share as we continue to move through this panel. We have passion and we have resources. And we decided, let's give it to people who don't have resources. And I'll also add, with the community connectors, each of us in our previous careers or our community work, we realized that we had a huge network. We've raised about $50,000 through our network in cash money. The United Arts Council gave us $45,000 to do art projects in a community that they want to see thrive. AT&T Foundation gave us 250 laptops to give to students in these high crime and low wealth areas, and people continue to send us money. So one of the things that I'm going to say is that when your community starts to see the police department working and really outside of normal policing, people will come and they will help you and they will give you resources. And so I say all of this to say that as we started doing this work, more people started coming. So let's fast forward a little bit.
We backing it up. we gotta go back because we were here before you guys got here, right? Understand Gate City Coalition started as Gate City Guardian.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because we did the work first before Chief James came. So we lost a couple of community members. As stated before, one of my nephews was murdered behind Bessemer, which is what started us doing the work to get cure violence to Greensboro, right? So which is a passion for me. So I've lost my nephew. I've lost my cousin. The very first day of January, the 1st, 2023, I lost my sister to gun violence. So the work has been the work for us. And for us to build a relationship with the police department and the community connectors was actually hard for us. Learning how to trust everybody on this panel to make sure that their interest was also my community's interest. I started as a youth being a community organizer as well as a political organizer. And so for me, being hands-on, being a survivor of gun violence as well, being shot in my head in 2011, me trusting the police to be there when I needed them to be there, as well as my community needing them to be there, was one of the biggest things that was an issue for me. Because what I know is police kill us. Police have been rough with my community. I have watched police slam my community members around and treat them unfairly and unruly. So walking into this work and walking into the work with Chief James and Captain Martis was really scary for me, but also my community putting me in a position of trust and being able to take them with me and them trusting me wholeheartedly, saying, okay, Ingram, if you say that they're going to be okay, we trust you. So because we trust you, we will trust them. And that has been one of the biggest things and one of the biggest challenges is building this organic relationship. Now, instead of me giving them the side eye, it's like, okay, Guy, Regina, what y'all need me to do? Oh, matter of fact, I need you guys to do something as well. But also being able to have the trust of my community when things are going wrong, when a homicide is taking place and they know something, they'll come to me and say, Ingram, I need you to call somebody. Don't give my name, but I need you to call somebody. Or, Ingram, I feel like I'm getting ready to go commit a crime. Can you come get this gun from me? So therefore, I'm taking guns so that there isn't a homicide committed, and having that conversation and being able to lock those guns up in our community so that there is not another body. So in my community, our stats have dropped 30% because of the work that we are doing. So that's our hooray.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go next. So when we say we didn't know how this was gonna work out, we really did not know how this was gonna work out. They were in the conference room already having the meeting. I came in a little bit late. So
I heard the name Ingram Bell. I heard what she was about, and I was like, I don't know who this lady is. We getting ready to go in this meeting. We're getting ready to find out. So I walk in the meeting, and everybody stops and does. And my eyes meet her eyes. She giving me the side eye. I'm giving her the side eye, and we're both like, I don't know what's been happening here. Long story short, it was really the trust. The trust was the biggest issue. And because people have the idea of what the police is big bad police, or we're the good, nice, sweet police. But the community has that same view as well. So we took, organically, I guess, we took the police and we separated into categories, because you have the police over here, but then you have officer guy. So I know that the trust that we have now, that the participants that Ms. Bill deals with, they know if we have an interaction, time and trust is the key, because they know I'm not going to be coming in there, hey, what you got? You're going to jail. It's not that type of situation, because the whole point is to exchange information. And we're able to be in those same places at the same time, even though I am the police, but I'm officer guy. I'm not the police. And we can accomplish many things in that safe space. Safe space for them, because they may have whatever they have on them. Safe space for me, that I know that even if we disagree, it's not going to be an issue. And it starts with one participant and one officer and one Ingram, because she can go in those spaces that I can't necessarily go in and get the same information that she can get in that same space.
And if I can add, that meeting that Officer Guy walked into, it was most of the community connectors. Our grant manager is here with us today, JD Visavi, and we just said, okay, we've been walking all over each other for 2 years. We're in the same areas. We're in the same Greensboro Housing Authority facilities, and we're trying to help the same kids in school. So after that meeting, I went back to the Office of Community Engagement, which is where my office is. And I said, I think we have something here. We will walk cautiously, but let's do an event with the police and Gate City Coalition. And so we set up a dinner. I asked Ingram, will your teammates come and sit down with us? And there will be police officers there. And she talked to them, and they said yes. Yeah, we did not meet at headquarters for this meeting. We met at a restaurant, and I talked to Guy and Megan and another officer, Officer Mebin, who used to be working with us as a CRO, but he's now working on our BHAR team. And I said, okay, we need to invite officers that understand the street, not trying to lock them up, but willing to sit down and listen. And we invited an SRO officer. We invited a PNRC officer who's working with Greensboro Housing Authority, Officer Megan, Officer Guy, and the community connectors. And I wasn't sure how that meeting was going to go, but I thought we had to at least try. And that night was pretty amazing. But I have to tell you the funniest thing. As I was trying to get things together and people were walking in, I was like, wow, Ingram's got this really tall, big guy on her team. Well, I wear glasses, and after he got closer, it was Officer Rulak. So it was an actual officer, but he had on a Batman t-shirt. And until he got close, I didn't know who he was. But it was really amazing that night, because we all listened to each other. We didn't have any false pretenses. We just wanted to learn from each other. And the PNRC officer, when he was talking with one of the Gate City Coalition team members, and they explained their process and what they do, he gave him his phone number. He says, now when you're in Hickory Trails, call me. We'll back up. We won't come anywhere near you because of the work that we know you're doing. One of Gate City Coalition members stood up, looked at Officer Ruzlak and said, if you had not have been the SRO at my school, I never would have graduated. Thank you for taking an interest in me, knowing that I was getting in all kinds of trouble. You coming up behind me, popping my head. But thank you, because I know that you saved my life. So there is a natural kind of relationship that can be built, and we all need each other. The police cannot solve every crime in their community. The police will not hear about things that are coming. It is going to take a collaboration. And what I find with Gate City Coalition, we're still cautiously moving forward, and we're still trying to learn each other. When I need them, they're going to come. And most often, people don't want to see a Black uniform. They need to somebody from the streets that understand the real struggle and that can give it to them straight. And police officers can, but sometimes that uniform is very intimidating and people will not come with their real truth. They'll give you half the story. And so it really is boiling down to relationship. And most recently, our CVIPI in Greensboro is partially with the city manager's office, with the Office of Community Safety, and the other part is with the police department. We went through violence interruption training with Gate City Coalition and some of the other community groups that are doing this work. And it was very eye-opening because some of the people from the connectors, I don't understand what's going on. Well, I'm like, you live on the other side of town. You don't have to understand, but keep your mind open, listen to the dialogue, and try to understand what's going on in communities other than where you live that are low wealth and high crime. And at the end of the day, it came out really good because it helped people who don't normally see a lot of the stuff that the police see or that Gate City Coalition sees. Awareness is the biggest game here. If you really want your community to get behind you, tell them, let them see the harsh realities for some people in their community. Because if you don't live on that side of town, and if you don't walk through that walk, you have no clue. And so communication, listening, it's all very key to the work that we're doing.
Thank you all for telling us a little bit about how your work got started. So I think one of the questions, and Regina, you talked about it a little bit, but I'd like to hear also from the officers about who's the best person to bring in to start this kind of collaboration. So I know, Regina, you kind of started the relationship, but in terms of like finding those officers and somebody that Ingram could feel safe coming into the space, and from the officer perspective, I wonder if you could just describe to us a little bit about, what it is about you or your work or why you were the right people to form this relationship.
Well, I'm not even sure how to go about picking the right officer. The officer somehow magically comes to the program because you have to be interested in the type of work, because some officers, oh, I'm strictly a drug officer, oh, I'm strictly this. But being in the role of a community resource officer, we have that close connection with the community. And then when you start hearing about how we can change the dynamic of the community, you just kind of gravitate to that particular work. And so by that gravitation, I guess I'm a good match for this, because I do feel it in my heart that this can work, but it's just getting the right pieces of that puzzle fit together and to make it work. Because you can't just nominate somebody and say, you officer, you go and do this, because if they don't feel it, if they don't have a passion for it, the community reads us just like we read the community, and they will pick it up in a heartbeat. They will call you out on it, and that decreases the amount of trust or willingness that the community will step forward to us.
We have to be able to trust you, right? We have to be able to feel comfortable. We have to be able to make a connection that says, if I if I will not judge me. If I come to you, I know that the help that I need, you will be able to provide for me. Um, and so as the protector, in my role as the program manager, one of the things that I am looked at in the community is the protector. Um, Regina called me the mama of everybody this morning. And so as the mom of my community, my job is to make sure that they stay protected, and that they can trust those that say they want to do the work, are going to do the work, are going to genuinely do the work and help us while they're doing the work, because it's going to take everybody. We can't do it by ourselves as a grassroots organization. I understand that, but also the police can't do it by themselves either. Sometimes over policing is an issue, as well as under policing is an issue as well. One cannot exist without the other. It is a perfect balance, and we have to be able to find that balance. And so, having officers that when you walk in, I'm one that is very big on vibes and on character and on genuineness. And so, if I feel like you're not genuine in the work that I do, or you have the best interest for my community, we won't work with you, because I need my team to be able to trust you, because my team are ex drug dealers, ex gang members, ex offenders, right? And so I need someone that is going to work with them, that will not judge them for their past, believe in their future, because that is the biggest part, because they are the ones that can touch people that you all can't touch. They are able to go in rooms that most of us can't go in. I'm lucky because I get to go sit at tables that most people can't. For Easter, I was sitting at a table with Crips and at a table with a Blood, and I was doing mediation on Easter Sunday. I had to do that without a gun and without the safety of the police with me. But when I do those things, after that is done on my end, I need to be able to walk them to the police officer and say, if you got an issue, this is an officer that you can trust. So that's very important on making sure that we all fit together like a puzzle. We can't have the wrong pieces at the table, or this work won't work.
I wonder, I have heard that Officer Fitzgerald has a unique role and perspective on this also. So could you talk a little bit about that relationship, and also about what have been some of the benefits of that relationship and the outcomes of your collaborations?
So, for me, the partnership has just been a tremendous blessing. Miss Bell and her team have been a great resource for us. There have been some instances where something may happen in the community. We're responding to a call. We go out, and the residents in the neighborhood just don't want anything to do with us at all. They refuse to talk to the police for various reasons. And that could just be that they don't like law enforcement. It could be that they're scared to talk to us out of fear of retaliation. And it also could be due to trust issues. So it's been a big help for us to be able to pick up the phone and call Miss Bell, tell her about what's going on, and have her to come out into the neighborhood and talk to the people that aren't interested in talking to us and gain information. And she's able to relay that information back to us so that we can do what we need to do on our end to help solve the crime.
Also like to
If I could, I would also like to add that this started maybe in August. This relationship is very new. It started in August, and then Ingrid came to headquarters when I asked her to come and meet with a few of us. The dinner that we all got together with this was in September. So It's a short relationship, but it's been very valuable. And I'd like to add, most recently, we've been working at one of our alternative schools in Greensboro. And our officer, we have a female officer that has a program there. And she asked me to come by one day, and I went. And all the girls could talk about was fighting. Oh, I couldn't fight at school, but as soon as I got off the bus, I started fighting. And, I got to thinking, and I'm like, you can't fight your way out of everything. And we've got to get these young ladies to stop kind of overreacting, I felt. Officer Guy, Officer Megan were there as well. And I went back and I was talking in the Office of Community Engagement, and I said, I think we need to put the girls in a boxing ring and let them box with each other. And I'm still thinking about that. But our director said, let's try something else first. And so she was like, call Ingram. And I invited Ingram to go with me the next week when we went to see the girls. And Ingram shared her story. And, some of the girls were like, I don't even want to come around that many police, because it's about 6 police officers there as well. But when they heard Ingram's story sitting among the police, it was amazing how they really heard it and how it resonated with them. So we now, at the end of each session, we meet on Tuesdays once a week. They are asked to write down one goal that they're going to work on from that Tuesday to the next Tuesday. And it's becoming really interesting now, because I think this has been going on for about 3 weeks. How, okay, I didn't fight this week, or I didn't go off on my teacher, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And, we're just seeing, it's a little movement, but it counts. And then I haven't been there the last 2 weeks, but before I left to go out of town, one young lady said, I didn't do any of this. And more importantly, I just turned 18. And I now understand the repercussions of my actions. For me, that was huge, because at 18 years old, you keep going out there fighting, you keep going out there doing stuff, and it escalates. Who knows what's going to happen to you? And then earlier this week, I was talking to our assistant chief, Rick Austin, and he said to me, there were some kids at the middle school, and they're not afraid of police. They're not even afraid of jail. So he took another person that works in the community for her to tell her story about her son getting shot. And, it's a one-off, but he felt like, too, these kids hurt them. So they really need to hear from somebody that's out there who understands the game of the streets, because a lot of time I don't have any real value to give them other than I see them, I want to help them, I want to love them, and I want to see them change their life around. But I don't have street credit. I don't care what I do. My story is not necessarily going to resonate, but Ingram and other violence interrupters speak their language, know their neighborhoods, and give them information that make them think twice about their actions.
I'd like to say one additional thing that I thought of while you were talking. We can't helicopter resources in and then we fly in there, we sprinkle a little happiness, and then we're out. It has to be consistent. You have to be in there day in, day out. Even if you go in there and it's a mistrust situation, I'm coming back. You might not trust me today, but maybe next week when I see you, maybe you'll trust me then. You have got to stay really inundated in these neighborhoods, and they got to know that you're coming back. It doesn't matter if the meeting is 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, if the meeting is at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. And a lot of times, no, I may not want to give up my Saturday, but if that's what it takes, I will. If you're going to be there, then I'm going to be there too. And that also helps in gaining the trust of the community. When they see you out there sweating, tired, and they're out there too, that really starts to mean a lot for the neighborhood, because this is an area that, of course, I don't live in, but if I'm spending that time in your area and putting in that work and you're doing the same thing, now that's a common ground that we have. And that is one step that really helps this work that we do work, because we're always there.
All right, we're going to save some time for questions here at the end, but Dr. Jackson, I want to hear from you as the researcher who's involved. So I know you're also a community connector, so you're doing the work and then you're also involved in a research role. So I wonder if you have any lessons to share with us other researchers in the room about how you look at CVIPI programs, just anything you can tell us in terms of what you've learned and what you're seeing and best approaches to that.
Thank you for that question. I think there's layers to this from a research perspective. I know traditionally, especially in law enforcement and criminal justice research, we do a lot of statistics. We're looking for relationships, correlations to variables and things like that. But one of the things that I know for sure, having been engaged in this work, the CVI work, as well as my volunteer work, as well as having done some of that correlational research. About 10 years ago, I did some research with a couple of teams that looked at implicit bias in traffic stops and searches. So in order to tell those stories with numbers, you need more information than just the numbers. So the approaches that we're using are time consuming. I know that sometimes it's easier to work with just the numbers, but you do have to take the time to hear the stories and to be able to tell the stories, to even take away conceptualizations in order to maybe even get to new themes that maybe we haven't explored as researchers of law enforcement and criminal justice programs. So I think there's just layers to what I feel like researchers and evaluators have to look at and invest the time in spending with law enforcement, with community members. I didn't just walk into any of this. I spent time in community. I live in Greensboro, but I don't live in some of the neighborhoods that we're doing research in. But when Miss Regina says, "Hey, we're having an event," I show up. I go help. I bring people with me when I can. So people in community now know my face. I'm not a stranger. And I'm called on not just by law enforcement or the Office of Community Engagement, but people in the community as well. So I know that it's maybe not realistic in some terms for researchers to do that. And it's even frowned upon, right? Because we're told that we need to be objective and that we need to step away from the work in order to be able to tell the story. But I think that as we're I feel like in a space where as researchers and evaluators, we have an opportunity to help transform that conversation. I know back when I was in my graduate program, mixed methods research was the taboo. You don't do that. But where we are in the world right now, the stories are important. I was telling Stacy a little while ago and Miss Regina about some research that I've been doing with an organization that's focused on education and leadership. And there's a marked difference in what leaders are looking at pre-COVID versus post-COVID. Pre-COVID, leaders were more focused on standards, reform, how do we measure change? Post-COVID, there's, it was like unquestionably a shift in thinking about things like trauma, mental health, and a shift away from standards and things like that. So I think there's a more of an awareness now that we do need to address the human element in order to help humans transform. So that's just a little few takeaways.
I think also it's hard to quantify what didn't happen without the stories. So if you all don't have the stories from us, how can you quantify it, right? So if you don't hear that we found a participant a job or our participant handed us a gun and decided not to shoot someone today or not to commit a violent act. You all won't have the data. So you have to be able to do or listen to the stories because you can't quantify what you can't see.
I also like to add, it's a lot of thinking outside the box because we wear these uniforms. We think we look good, our black, our little shiny trinkets and stuff. But the community has a different perspective on that. Because we were at a community meeting and this lady was like, "You standing up there with that black on, so cold, you have your arms crossed," because that was the message that she was perceiving that I was giving off. So when we go to these events and we do these programs, we change this uniform. We'll do, a lot of things outside the box to convey that trust. So we'll have polo shirts and khaki pants because we're more approachable. We look nicer, friendlier. Maybe the colors work with our complexion. I don't know, but it's something that's small because it does change that perception, but it works. And you'll have people coming up giving you a hug or, and it really sparks the conversation, even if it's just, "Oh, I never seen a uniform like that," because it's something to start that communication, to start that rapport. And then when you see that person out in the mall, they be like, "Is that you?" And then, it's just something that's kind of happened and it's something that's been working. It's been working for us. I can say that.
All right. Thank you all for your insights. We'd like to open it up to the room to see if there's some questions, and we have a microphone that will be going around. So if you have a question, just please raise your hand.
Hello. My question is, being a campus officer, how do you all take the coalition and intermingle it with the campuses in your area? Because I have a son at UNCG, so I would be very interested to see if y'all have any connections with the campus outside of A&T.
So our number is plastered everywhere. We're always doing a bunch of different community events. Gate City does 15 to 20 events a year, as well as the Community Connectors does events as well. We're on Facebook. I'm available. My number is everywhere. I was like, I'm going to have to get me a personal number because my personal number is now turned into my business number. But we're always available. While most of you all are sleeping, I'm outside. So while you all are sleeping and nesting in your homes, my team is outside at the 2 to 6s. My team is at the clubs making sure that we don't have homicides. So we're available. We're always available. And you just reach out to us. But there are also other organizations that are now starting to do the work. And they're available as well. So we kind of rotate shifts. But on the weekends when high crime and violence take place, we're definitely outside. And my outreach workers and my violence interrupters were once part of the problem and now they're part of the solution. So you can always reach them.
I'd like to also add to that UNCG has come to the table. Their nursing program comes out. We just had an event on Saturday working to get kindergarten students in these areas registered for kindergarten. Their nurses came out and did health assessments. They came out and did hearing and screenings. So the UNCG, some of the departments, they're out there in community with us. And so they get a chance to see some of the violence interrupter groups.
And I'll just add that you asked about campus involvement. Some of our students work with the police department, with Miss Regina and the Office of Community Engagement. So, we're always looking for interns or, students that might want to engage with us and get some experience in this work.
Congratulations. It's very impressive on everyone on the panel side. The question that I have is twofold. Have you seen a reduction in crime? I know this is relatively new, but do the numbers statistically show a reduction in crime? And then second, has there been a critical incident involving the police since this relationship has been formed?
So in my target areas, the crime has decreased 30%. Um, since 2019, I've only had 9 homicides total versus the years before. So there has been a reduction when it comes to violent crimes in our target area, which is part of the reason that the city decided to do the Office of Community Engagement and the Office of Violence Prevention, because the work was working. And they saw how important the work was to be spread out through the entire city versus just in concentrated areas. Um, so yes, there has been, and there has been an officer involved shooting in our city. However, as a city, as a collective, violence is not accepted for us anywhere. So when a police officer was murdered, our team contacted the Office of Violence Prevention, and we co-hosted a candlelight vigil for the officer. And so that has helped us show that we stand in solidarity with our police officers, even though we don't necessarily work with them, but we do stand in solidarity with them because violence is going to be unacceptable any way you put it. And so I hold my community accountable as well as I hold the police accountable.
I would also like to add that actually, Dr. Jackson and I were just talking yesterday. We have seen a decline in homicides. However, I would not say that it's just us. As Dr. Jackson said earlier, it's a layered approach. It's GPT Patrol, it's the police department, it's the community connectors, it's Gate City Coalition. It's a layered approach. We are all out there every day trying to make sure that we're helping somebody not commit that homicide.
And I'll just add that, you know, the layered thing is real. The data that we looked at yesterday, we were looking at recent data just for this year. And one of the things that stood out was that one of our districts has had a large increase in we were looking specifically at homicide data, a large increase in the number of homicides this year over last year. And then other districts were down. So the majority of the districts for this year, homicides are down. There's one district in particular that they're up, but there are unique things happening in that district that are different from things that are happening in the other districts. So you have to, I feel like in whoever's in law enforcement in the room, you probably already know this. Things as the environment changes in your city, those that might commit violent crime, those situations might shift and change. So you kind of have to watch what's happening in your city that might be creating an environment where these things might happen.
I like to further add to that. So looking at that same data, we have scattered across the city, we have Greensboro Housing Authority sites. So one of the dynamics that played a role in that, I would say, is we had one of the sites that is under construction. So they displaced a large number of families from this site and they placed them on the other side of town in another site, which it makes sense on paper, but in reality, you have individuals that associate with this particular set of, let's say, gang members, and then you have these individuals over here that are this set of gang members, and what they did was take these gang members and put over here with these gang members, which crime over here in my district went down a little bit, but crime drastically increased. When I say crime, violent crime increased in this district just because of that move. That, like I said, it was good on paper, but when you actually put those people in those new places, it didn't work out as well as that they thought it would.
Sometimes they don't listen to community because community warned them before they made that move. Do not make that move. And what was said to me was, it's too done. and I said, we're going to have homicides in this area. And that is exactly what happened, right? However, the good thing is we have Dr. Jean Blackman over there on that side and myself, which had connections with those community members that were moved because they were part of my community. So we were able to have those type of conversations across the board with other people that are doing the work. But sometimes everybody has to listen to the community.
One thing I'll add to that is one of the reasons why when the connectors started doing our work, one of the things that I know Miss Regina, myself, and the other connectors were interested in empowering community. Coming out of COVID, interesting to watch the synergy develop because people have been isolated. And so as we begin to come out after we got vaccine, to engage. It appeared, and this is, unique to Greensboro. I can't speak for other communities, but it appeared that the people were ready to engage and to talk and to discuss how we could improve the things that were happening in our city. So I also think, we have to take things within the context that they happened. I don't know that this is applicable. I can't say that this is applicable across all cities. I think that there are parts and pieces of what we're doing that might work in different communities. I look at things, a lot of the things that we're doing is we'll pilot something and see how it works. Because as situations change, the approaches that we use may need to shift and change. So being adaptive is a huge part of what, as we inform our work, the adaptability of our team and the folks that we're working with in community, coupled with empowering community, giving community the things that they need so that they can speak up for themselves and hopefully be heard, are all, I feel like, critical components to the work that we do.
I think we have time for one more question. If
I was waiting to give my question. One, our violence interrupters in Durham have made it clear that they don't really like to be seen as having a relationship with the police. So one, I wanted to ask, a little more about how I think Ingram is your name. You said when you introduced yourself that you weren't always a part of the team, that your team grew into being partners with the police. So I guess I kind of wanted to know a little more specifics. Did the police reach out to you because they knew you were doing good work in the community, or did you see what they were about to do and you reached out to them to say, hey, y'all need some advice from the community? And then one other thing I wanted a question is, I heard you all say you get different grants and whatever. So I assume, Ingram, that you get some of that funding to help you do the work you're doing.
Okay, so we started off working with Bull City United. David and Queen actually trained us when we first started looking into CB. And absolutely, most violence interrupters don't talk to the police. There is one-way communication. They give us data and we give them nothing, right? However, growing into understanding what that looks like means that continuously causes division, because that makes the police not trust us and that makes us not trust them. Which is why I said we outgrew pure violence. Because for us, in order to be able to work with law enforcement when one of my participants gets locked up, they have to be able to trust me when I say, listen, I'm going to walk him in. I understand he got a warrant, but I don't want you to come into this community and tear my community up. Let me walk him in, and they're going to trust me to walk them in and bring them when necessary. I can attribute that to my mother. My mother was a foster parent for 30 plus years. I got 100 siblings on paper. So I've seen everything under the sun, right? And being a grassroots organizer, it helped me understand the importance of that. And also I have law enforcement in my family. So I know my family members aren't bad. So I have to be able to convey that outside of that. My mom also worked as one of the ladies in the office with the with the PNRC Center when she lived in Hampton Homes. So she had to develop relationship with them as well. So she walked others into the police station as well. So I have one brother who says, I was wanted for murder and they were pulling me over. And my mom said, don't touch him. I'm going to bring him to you. And he was able to trust my mom. So watching that made me want to say, okay, what is it that I can do and bring to the table to help that? And so, no, they don't trust the police. My team, still, they're not here today. It's me, right? So trust me enough to have this relationship. And I have to make a phone call and say, we got to walk somebody in. They done went off. They didn't go to their probation officer. They got a warrant for their arrest. Call the probation officer. We're going to walk them in. One of us is going to walk them in. Or my supervisor up under me, she had one of her participants was wanted for murder. Went on the site. They had full tactical gear on and everything. She had her uniform on. She said, it's me. I'm going to go in the house. I'm going to get him out and I'm going to walk him out to you. Do not touch him until I get there. And that is exactly what they did. So that is why it is important for us to build this trust in this relationship so that we don't have those type of instances where the police go in, they're rough, they're aggressive, or someone could get shot, either the police or one of our participants. My job is to protect the community. The community means everybody. So that is why we outgrew the model, because we don't just do violence interruption, we do community interruption, right? So we find jobs, we do community events, we work on building a 30, 90, 60-day cycle of what their goals are. We make sure that we work with them up to a year in the first round to have their goals met. After that, we assess them again and figure out what it is that they need to do next. So we continuously follow them until they age out, so to speak. Actually, one of my participants is now one of my outreach workers. He went from being someone in my program to now being one of my employees, right? And yes, we do get grants. And being on the board for the Office of Violence Prevention for the state helps us as well find those grants to come in. We get funding from the city, and now from the county. We were getting funding from the city, but once they opened the Office of Violence Prevention, that went away, and then they gave us, so they cut the funding and gave funding to other places. So now we are supplementing that with other grants. So which is why I stay busy and find things that can work for my team, because we're not just concentrated with just violence interruption. You got to work with that individual as a whole. You have to get to the root of the issue. You cannot just cover something surfacely. We don't just work with that individual. We work with their family, their kids, their siblings, their mama, their daddy, whatever that looks like for them. So that in order to change that one person, you got to change the entire circle. So that's what we're doing, and that's why we're finding funding.
And I'd also like to add the way the conversation got started with Ingram and GPD was we were both at a community meeting, and she said, I don't get invited to community connector events. And I'm like, but we're in the same area, so we got to change that. And also, we invite her to events that we're doing, but she also reaches out to us to come to their events. So as I said, it's an ongoing relationship, and we're learning how to work together.
Thank you. I think that's a good end note. I know we're about out of time, but I feel like we could talk about this for another hour. So again, thank you all for your time today and sharing your expertise with us.